Hello, and thanks for joining us today. I am Ryan Evans with the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And today is part of our center's weekly webinar series, which typically happens every Thursday at noon Central Time. A full schedule is available on our website at cap.unl.edu. That is cap.unl.edu. And today's webinar is brought to you by Nebraska Extension's Land Link program, which works to connect land seekers with landowners who are retiring and looking for successors. Land seeker and landowner applicants are matched with the most compatible counterparts so that a mutually beneficial partnership can be forged over the course of the transition plan. And you can find out more about that program at cap.unl.edu/landlink, as you see there on the screen. Well, be it weather disasters, machinery breakdowns, finances, volatile markets, or a host of other challenges, farmers and ranchers have no shortage of stressors in their lives. And while many may know the importance of discussing and planning for financial health, the need to spend time on mental health may be less obvious. But today we'll learn the importance of dealing with the stress of farming and ranching and pick up some simple and helpful strategies to do so. Presenting for us, we are really glad to be joined by Brandy VanDeWalle, a Nebraska Extension educator based in Fillmore and Clay counties. Brandy has a wide range of expertise and passions, including educating youth in crop science, ag literacy, working with 4-H and FFA, and as a member of Extension's rural wellness team, she puts her passion for helping people into action. Brandy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. So good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to go ahead and get started here. So first of all, just a little bit about myself. As Ryan said, I'm an extension educator located in Fillmore and Clay counties. And just so you kind of know a little bit about myself and kind of the lens on which to take this presentation, these are just some pictures of kind of my family. And one of the biggest pieces that I use as a strategy when I get stressed, whether it's from work or personal issues or anything, is just taking that moment to think about gratitude and all of the maybe many blessings that we have in our life. So as Ryan said, I am in Clay Fillmore counties, and I've been in extension for 16 years. The first half of my extension career, I worked within the cropping systems area and worked with farmers, did pesticide training, on-farm research, and some of those pieces. And the second half of my career has been as a 4-H youth development educator and engaging them within crops. And so being on a small little acreage is really important to me, and I understand a lot of the challenges of agricultural life, just not on a larger scale like many of you might have. I grew up on a family farm in Saline County, and so my dad is still an active farmer, and so that's just a little bit about myself. And my husband is also, to mention, a high school agriculture education instructor. So with him being busy with FFA and myself being busy with 4-H, we work a lot with youth. So just to start it off here, I wanted to provide just a little bit of kind of some comic relief or some little pieces of information here just to lighten it up a little bit. So I know you're in ag if you have several articles of clothing that bear trademarks of seed or animal health companies. I know we're certainly in some of that setting. By the time you get your driver's license, you've been driving for several years. Having a 13-year-old, soon to be 14 this summer, would be pretty interesting to see. If your tallest structure in your county is a grain leg or silo, if you regularly use baling wire, binder twine, duct tape, or zip ties to fix things, or if you've been in at least one argument with your spouse while working livestock. And finally, growing up, you ate breakfast, dinner, and supper, and lunch was something you had at school. This is always a debate in my house with my daughters. So in agriculture, we all know that farming is one of the most dangerous occupations, all of the equipment and unpredictability and livestock. And unfortunately, agriculture sustains one of the highest mortality rates from stress-related illnesses. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Also, the impact of stress on mental health of farmers is an international concern. So not just something that impacts us here in the United States, but something that is more of a global problem. Why Extension team is really focusing on some of this is just basically the suicide crisis that we've had. So the US farmer suicide crisis echoes a much larger farmer suicide crisis happening globally. And so I won't go over all of these statistics, but just a couple things to point out here is that for every suicide, there are many more people who attempt suicide. And a prior suicide attempt is the single most important risk factor for suicide in the general population. Some other startling statistics that our Wellness in Tough Times team have from 2018 is that suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in Nebraska and the 4th leading cause of death in 35 to 50-year-old Nebraskans. And unfortunately, the 2nd leading cause of death in 15 to 34-year-old Nebraskans. So that's just kind of setting it up for the frame of where we're going to talk about how to handle stress. So this is again my attempt to be a little more lighthearted here. So what do you call a cow who just had a baby? It's decaffeinated. So okay, so digging into today's presentation, we'll look at exactly what is stress, trying to recognize the symptoms of stress, and most importantly, how to cope with stress and come up with some really good strategies that are very useful and easy to implement. We'll also talk about reducing stress for farm families. And then towards the end, I'll provide some information about helping others and then some resources that we have. So a couple of comic strips here. What do you mean you need to find a balance between your work and family? We consider you a part of our family. And later on, I'll talk about some slides about sometimes while it is a blessing to work with our family in agriculture, there are also a lot of dynamics that can also cause some concerns and some stressors. And so hopefully we can find some ways to combat those. And a lot of times stress is all about perspective. If you are a bullfighter, of course you've been feeling a little bit of work-related stress, but nonetheless, there's a lot of stress in agricultural settings as well. Stress can also impact, unfortunately, our physical health, and we'll talk about that later. And so one of the family farm succession planners who actually is in Canada, I've had a chance to read her book and have her come to Fillmore County several years ago for a program. And I like this one quote that she has, and it's that feeling good is good for business. And so she says, Elaine Froese says, sometimes the best thing to do is take a nap or sleep on a major decision. I'm amazed at how many men avoid seeing their doctors and therefore do not ensure their physical and mental health is helping, not hurting their ability to make sound decisions for their business and families. And sometimes I think it's just something where we're busy, we don't take as much time to really take care of ourselves like we need to. So agricultural life is rewarding. I've been blessed to be raised on a farm and still try to embrace my 2 daughters within the agricultural setting. But we just need to recognize that there is good stress and there is bad stress. So that's what we're going to dig into next. Just a quick definition of stress. It's the human response to any change that is perceived as a challenge or a threat. And so the key factor here is the human response. So for some of you, equipment breakdown, maybe depending upon the year, might not impact somebody to the degree as another individual, because it's how we ourselves respond to that stress. Just thinking about other tasks within my role in extension, some of us can juggle and balance a lot more tasks or projects than others. And so again, it's just that human response that we have. Another point about stress is that changes can cause worry, frustration, and upheaval, and sometimes things seem beyond our control. So trying to think of, what are things that we can change and what are things that we cannot change. And perfect example we have in Nebraska is always the weather, being in drought and dry conditions right now. Obviously, there's not a lot we can do about the situation, but how we respond to the situation is in turn how we'll handle our stress. And the last point here is about our attitudes. So our attitudes, perceptions, and meanings that people assign to events determine a large part of their stress levels. So some people will take this as more of a half glass full. Some people will take things as more of a half glass empty approach. So again, some people are just normally more positive, and so just again thinking about the attitude upon which we take things at. So just looking at a quick question here, thinking about is all stress bad? I just want you to think about that here for a little bit. And when we define stress, there's really two types of stress that we have. There's eustress. So this is actually the good types of stress. So this is the stress that we have if a wedding is coming up, the birth of a baby, maybe within the holidays, you're trying to get everything done at Christmas time, try to get everything wrapped. So that's basically the good stress. And it's good because it helps us get ready both physically and mentally for the event. So in agriculture, thinking about planting, thinking about harvest, it just kind of helps us get ready. I also say it kind of helps us prevent procrastination, and will make sure that what needs to get done will actually get done. The problem lies, though, when we suffer from too much stress. So particularly if we have a long period of time. So when we have those chronic situations, certainly the floods that we had in Nebraska several years ago, having that prolonged period of stress can actually cause some physical problems, and then also impact our mental abilities as well. So what I'd like for you all to do right now, if you could, in the chat box, when you're stressed in a good way, and if you don't want to type in the chat box, that's fine. I'm going to give you a minute or two to think about this. But when you're stressed in a good way, how do you look, behave, and communicate with others? So I'm going to pause here for a little bit, and feel free to, again, type in the chat box or just kind of self-reflect upon that. Okay, so I'll just start off with an example here that when I'm stressed in a good way, I'm usually kind of excited. I feel maybe motivated. I see someone in the chat box there, thanks Carmen, typed busy, excited, ready to go. So, certainly thinking about, weddings are just, I think, kind of a great example. It's an anticipation and excited for things to happen. So usually you're very positive. I see that are groomed, positive, motivated. Those are all some great things. Birth of a child, there's just that anticipation. It's almost kind of like Christmas is coming. You just get all of that excitement. So then on the flip side of that, I want you to think about when you're stressed in a bad way, how do you look, behave, and communicate with others? I see some answers coming in here. So short, snappy, probably need a shower. Yeah, I certainly, maybe get a little more sarcastic, maybe not as fun to be around. I see also scattered, out of sorts. I know sometimes when I'm stressed in a bad way, I can't even think clearly because I just have so much on my mind, and just some of the smallest of things, of tasks can be really hard to accomplish. So obviously when we're stressed in a good way, usually we're more enjoyable to be around than when we're stressed in a bad way. So we're going to have a poll being launched here real quick, and I'm just curious right now about how well you feel that you handle stress. So Ryan's going to just launch that here. So how well do you feel you are at effectively managing stress? Not at all well, somewhat well, or very well? I'll just give you a few seconds to handle that. And this is all anonymous, so I'm not going to hold you accountable for that. Okay, so it looks like most of us are about kind of in that middle, somewhat well, and I would agree that that's probably pretty common for most of us here. So thanks for sharing that here. Now we'll go ahead and move on to our next slide here. So when we talk about stress management, there's really the three elements that we have of our stress management. So first of all, we think about there has to be the presence of an external stressor. So in kind of an example here, maybe it's a difficult person, or maybe it's a certain situation. So just thinking about sometimes in my role, very heavily involved, obviously, with our county fair. So it could be somebody upset with a certain results. And so that would be the presence that is there. And then kind of that second element is the individual internalization of stress. So how do you internalize it? So we all have the choice of how we're going to respond. We can try to engage with that person and maybe have some really negative results, maybe say things we didn't necessarily mean, or try to take a step back, take a deep breath, and kind of realize that maybe, don't take it personally. Maybe it's, just a situation, the person just needs to talk or vent, but it's really how you, kind of internalize or think about that. And then finally, kind of along the lines with that, how you're going to respond. So once you've had that kind of internalization or reflection piece about, okay, how do I want to respond in this to get the most effective results? It's that third piece of how you're going to respond to the actual stressor. So, So I put up another example here. I have a meet bear and grizzly. So these are my daughter Meredith's bucket calves this year. And this is just a little example of something that kind of happened yesterday. So we've been planning a Fillmore Central Middle School petting zoo for a couple of months. And we had this all planned out, and we thought, well, it's not just a petting zoo, but basically a health and wellness fair for the youth. And there's been actual research and statistics that show that animals, whether it's therapy dogs or equine therapy, all of those pieces can really help us control stress. So we thought, let's go ahead and we knew it was a little bit of a risk the end of March, but let's try to have a kind of a petting zoo. So we did have the companion animals, but then we're also going to tie it in with our beef boosters locally. So I thought, okay, my daughter, the red calf over there is bear and the black one is grizzly. So I thought, oh, this will be great. Some of these kids, though we're in a rural community, still don't have a chance to actually see cattle and learn a little bit more about what a bucket calf is. So they're going to be one of the featured stars. And of course, yesterday, if you're anywhere here around Geneva, it was cold and windy. And I went out Tuesday night, and the black calf there, grizzly, was coughing, and I'm like, oh, this isn't good. Shouldn't take him out there. So Mr. Bear, the red calf, did a great job. We adapted, we pivoted, and actually the calf, we were able to have our little petting zoo component of it, and was actually in the shop, so probably had a much better life than was much warmer than he was if he would have been at home. So just kind of walking through a process of kind of how you internalized and worked on that with the committee. And obviously this is a much lighter situation than some other situations. So think about, and I know for the sake of time, we won't get into this too much, but as we go through this presentation, I want you to think about maybe external stressor. Could be something that you are dealing with right now, or something you anticipate that that might come, or some change or anything. So just kind of think about what that external stressor will be, and then hopefully we'll provide some strategies that you can think about how you actually would respond to that actual stressor. So I'm probably preaching to the choir here that you all know the stresses of agricultural life. But this list here just shows from an actual producer poll some farm and ranch specific worries or stressors that you have. So obviously rising expenses. Now this was a little while ago, so I know we have high prices right now, but nonetheless, the commodity markets are always difficult for us to handle. Dealing with the farm and ranch finances, machinery breakdown is always a concern. Prolonged bad weather or natural disaster with our dry conditions right now, certainly that is an issue, and weather-related crop loss. And then there's always that fear or pressure of delay in planting. Am I going to be able to get in the field when I need to? And then the time pressures, the long working hours. Certainly the amount of hours that that farmers put in, especially during planting and harvest, is nothing short of amazing. And just the farm viability pieces there. So again, this data is a little bit older, came out in 2003, but nonetheless, there's lots of other examples that you can have. So within the same data, they also asked, what are some of the worries that are shared with most families? So kind of looking at it from a family's perspective. Certainly, what happens if there's a death in the family? How is the farm or ranch going to adapt within that setting? Divorce or separation, or any other change in family relationship dynamics. A major illness or disability are certainly huge concerns. We all know our population, especially in the farming, ranching area, is aging. So what is the plan of care for those aging parents? Worries about owing money and getting some debt paid off. Also, sometimes the amount of few vacations that are taken. When you have livestock, especially, it's extremely hard or impossible to get off the farm or ranch unless you have supports there to help you. And then, of course, the changing economic conditions. So I believe I have a poll right now, Ryan, I'll have you launch, that talks about what are some major stressors that you all have right now. So I guess going back to our previous slide here, what are some of the concerns you're most worried about? And I guess I should have changed that first one, but you could rising expenses, and we could just consider that piece there. And you can click on 3 of these options too, so feel free to do that. Okay, about 55% participated. We can go ahead and close the poll. So yeah, kind of all over the place. Obviously rising expenses is a huge concern, and yep, the weather conditions and time pressure, but really it's obviously just kind of all over the place. So the next poll question then is going to focus on worries shared with most families. So looking maybe a little bit more on the family side of things. So which ones are these some of your concerns? Okay, that looks good. So yep, changing economic conditions, major illness or disability. Those are most definitely huge concerns to think about. Aging parents, worries about owing money. So again, kind of all over the place. But okay, so our next slide. So whoops, go back here. So at our Husker Harvest Days tent for our group on Wellness in Tough Times, we had some conversations and some evaluations, or kind of those little surveys that we had some producers fill out. And one of the best quotes that we had from a Nebraska farmer or rancher was that you will have to talk about this or it'll eat you alive. So what this particular individual was talking about the stress that you have in your life. Sometimes we bottle it all up, or we're private people. We don't want people to maybe know about our concerns or matters. And you just think about it. If I were to ask you, how are you doing? You know, what's the most common response? Fine. You know, those types of things. So again, just talking about it and getting it out in the open with a trusted family member or friend can really help reduce the stress that we have. So this is a really long list of how stress can actually impact us. And so it can impact us physically, emotionally, behaviorally. It can affect our cognition as well as our self-worth. So feel free to take a look at this list here. And if you feel comfortable typing in the chat box, that is fine. Or just think about some of these. And I'll just kind of share a couple of examples how I know when my stress is getting to my extreme level and I need to maybe settle down or use some of the tips that I'm going to provide here in a little bit. Just examples of kind of on the cognitive things. I think this came up earlier in the chat that sometimes lack of concentration or feel like you're all over the place. Sometimes when I have so many different things to do, just the simplest of tasks, I just have a hard time concentrating, and I have to just literally kind of write all of my tasks down and try to kind of put them in like my little parking lot and try to address them later. Just the simplest things can occur. Just even certain like kind of short-term memory loss, maybe forgetting things, forgetting all of those things that I have to do. But when you look at this list here, you know, it's really all over the place. So how everyone handles stress can be really hard. If someone maybe has sleeping problems, you know, we're not really necessarily going to know about that. But you know, isolation, if there's someone that, you know, that's always a social person and suddenly they kind of isolate themselves, that's maybe one of the things to think about. Boy, I haven't seen so-and-so in a while. Maybe I should kind of check in with them. So it can be kind of hard to really know how people handle stress. Also, I think a lot of us, especially in rural communities, we're hardworking people. And so, you know, think about that self-worth. Sometimes taking on more than is reasonable to handle. Sometimes that 2-letter word, no, can be really, really important for us to do just for our own sanity and to handle some of our stressors. So again, there's a huge list of ways that stress can impact us. So the issue, though, is that when we experience these chronic, prolonged symptoms of stress, these are some of the major things that we can actually see. So a change in routine. So just a quick little example here. If a farmer or a farm family, you know, is usually always attending church, maybe they drop out as a 4-H leader. Maybe they no longer attend like the local coffee shop or the feed mill. That could be kind of a sign and a symptom that something might be going on with them, and maybe a little check-in is needed. One of the other things can happen is the care of livestock can decline. So if, for example, cattle, if they're not cared for in the usual way, they might lose condition or appear gaunt. That's, again, another sign that someone needs to be checked in on. An increase in illness. So one of the presentations that I had a chance to do in person had an example of a farm mom that had taken her child to the doctor after doctor because of illness, and they were having a really, really difficult time trying to decide what was happening. And finally, after seeing one of our extension presentations, realized that her daughter was just dealing with a lot of stress. And again, if we think about that first slide, you know, having just stomach pains, headaches, fatigue, all of those things can really really build up over time with us. An increase in farm accidents. So when we're stressed, we probably don't think clearly. Again, we think back to the cognition component, and that's when those really bad accidents can happen. So just trying to take time to not be so rushed within those particular instances. And also when we're tired, when we're fatigued, if we've been putting in those really, really long hours, it's really hard for us to concentrate, and that's when accidents happen. The appearance of farmstead declines. So if the farm family no longer takes pride in the way the farm buildings or grounds appear, they no longer have time to do maintenance work. And then kind of the final one here is that children show signs of stress. So if there's a farm or ranch child that suddenly starts to act out and has never maybe behaved in that manner, that is also kind of a sign. And children are pretty smart. They can sense when something's going on the farm and ranch. And so if their academic performance starts to decline, or they're increasingly absent from school, those could also show some huge signs of stress. So if that stress continually lingers over time, it can actually cause some really impactful health impacts. So it can increase our blood cholesterol, which in turn can cause heart disease. And long-term stress can affect how our blood actually clots and make the blood stickier and increase our risk for stroke. So trying to realize that is really important. So now we're going to move on for how to handle stress. We talked about the importance or issues that stress can cause. So these are some other strategies for handling stress. So the first is thinking about deep breathing. So sometimes you think, oh yeah, does this really work? Well, in extension, we've learned within our team, sometimes there's something called box breathing. So you basically picture if you were going to breathe in a box, you take a deep breath as you're going this way, and you exhale. You basically just kind of keep trying to think about doing that, or just taking really big, deep breaths. When I get to my breaking point, for me, I get headaches really often, and I get tension in my neck and my shoulders. And sometimes just seriously taking a deep breath can really just kind of help calm down. If your heart starts to beat, you just get to the point of you can tell physically. Taking some of those deep breaths can kind of get that oxygen back in your brain and really help you out a lot. Self-talk. So positive self-talk can really play a key role here. Yesterday, I did a program with youth talking about persistence and resiliency. And those youth even said, well, we need to have positive self-talk. And so we talked about it can be really easy if you make a mistake and you think, oh, that was so stupid. Like, Brandy, you're so dumb. Don't do that. Trying to just laugh at yourself, for one, using humor, but just trying to tell yourself, it's okay. It happened. Not a big deal. And one of the other three words that I try to tell myself I call them the 3 C's. So telling myself I'm calm, I'm confident, and I'm in control. I'm just really trying to think about how I can handle this situation, whatever it might be. I'm also meditating. This can happen in several different ways. So if you are of a deep religious faith, this could include taking some time in quiet prayer every day. Or there's tons and tons of other meditation apps out there. One of them that I actually like is called Calm, just CALM, and it has some really good, that one is free, some really good pieces on there. Another one, I have some free tips, but it's called Insight Timer, and it has just some calming music. It actually has some kind of meditations. Sometimes when I'm having a hard time just shutting my brain off from the day, some of them are 5 to 10 minutes, and it really just kind of helps make myself get to sleep or be more present with my girls when I'm actually home. Certainly exercise can really help. when we get so upset and so mad, it can help just kind of help us, calm down. Whatever type of exercise you like, even just a quick walk throughout the day. It doesn't have to be a really hard, strenuous, 30 to 60 minute workout. Just getting in 10 to 15 minute little breaks throughout the day are really good ways to help kind of reset your brain. Of course, eating the right foods. Certain foods can kind of make us sluggish and not feel as productive. And then getting sleep. My colleague, Susan Harris, some expert in this area, and has got a lot of information how just really trying to get good sleep can really help our bodies reset in a lot of different ways. Connecting with people in your social network. So really having those really true family friends or other people in the community, maybe your pastor or someone else, just kind of connecting with them and just letting them know that, hey, I'm really having a hard time, dealing with this. I'm really stressed. What can I do? One of the other things that I talked about yesterday with the youth was how creativity can actually kind of help us it can help us develop that resiliency. When you think about things, I think sometimes us adults can be much more linear or kind of driven down toward one path. And if we maybe take a minute to talk to somebody about something, maybe just having them think outside the box, you can handle a situation maybe much, much better. And then, of course, speaking with a mental health professional. So someone said, sometimes if you go to like a medical doctor for physical health, you might not necessarily like their personality or like maybe the diagnosis or whatever it is about that person. So sometimes, just because maybe you go to one counselor or mental health professional, maybe you don't click. So it's okay to kind of shop around. Now after COVID, there's a lot more telehealth options available. And just, again, trying to find that person that you're able to connect with. So obviously this is not an effective method of handling stress. Think about like the Incredible Hulk. If you get mad and turn into a green monster, smash everything. For stress management program that's really worked for me. Obviously don't do that method. Okay, so here's a quick little video. Think about if this is effective or not effective.
What do you think you're honking at, huh? What, you don't like the way I drive? What, come on in here, I'll give you a driver. No. You want a piece of me? What's going on? Get you some, huh? Where are you gonna go now? Well, you can't speed up by anybody now. You think you're better than me? What, you think, oh, I like the way you drive. What, you got a fancy bike? Huh? Out!
The Trunk Monkey, a revolutionary idea you will only find at Suburban Auto Group, pending approval by Attorney General.
All right, back in the trunk.
Okay, obviously that was a little joke here, and I would say that is probably not effective, but some other activities though, other things that can help. We talked about getting a well-balanced diet. It's just maybe kind of intuitive thinking there of how that can actually help us. Here's just another kind of example putting out there about exercising half an hour a day, every day or every other day. And again, you can break that up into chunks if you need to. We talked about sleep. And then I really like this fourth one here of accepting that stress is a part of life, but then not dwelling on it. So I used the example yesterday that if I maybe had 10 minutes of maybe a really bad, unpleasant conversation with somebody, or something happened that just really, really stressed me out, the rest of the day doesn't have to be that terrible. Try to find that focus, like recenter yourself and try to make the best of the rest of your day. It's kind of like if you get up in the morning, if you overslept, you spill coffee on your shirt, you think, oh, it's going to be a terrible day. Well, you've already pretty much told yourself it's going to be a bad day. So try to just think about, I tell my girls, is this a little problem or a big problem? And it can be really hard when you're kind of in the moment, but try not to dwell on it and just reset yourself. Clearly define home and work responsibilities. That work-life balance is extremely difficult in our farm and ranch settings, especially if you farm with a sibling or a a child, trying to realize that it's important for us to work together as a family, but, maybe I do need to take a quick little vacation with my immediate family, and just trying to have those kinds of open conversations about those responsibilities. Managing time efficiently. So there's a whole other session that could be done on time management, and just really trying to think about what works the best for you. Is it writing things down? Is it using your calendar on your phone, or do you have a special paper planner that you want to use? And some people know that they're much more know their sweet spot of when they're able to think clearly or be the most productive. So for example, if you're a morning person, and maybe you want to devote a portion of your time during the morning to work on maybe getting taxes or finances figured out, or whatever that might be. So just trying to figure those times out. I know for me, after lunch is definitely not my good. I'm not thinking very well or very clearly, and certainly don't have time for, it's not when I'm the most creative or the best at my job. So trying to figure out those times when you're the most productive. Setting realistic goals. Sometimes we have a list, and if it is really, really long, trying to think, can I really get all of those things done today? Again, when we're rushed, when we're stressed, we're in a hurry, is when accidents happen. So really trying to think about maybe what are the 3 or 4 most important tasks that I have to get done today, and then moving accordingly. Learning to relax. It might sound kind of silly, but really sometimes we're always, your mind is always racing and always thinking. So one of the things that I found my husband has done, sometimes I thought, boy, it takes him a long time to do chores. And again, we only have our 12 head of 4-H cattle. So we do not have near the amount of cattle that I'm sure many of you have. But he would take such a long time just to do chores. And finally I asked him one time, I was like, what are you doing out there all the time? And he said, that's his time to relax. Just kind of watching the animals, watching them eat, it just kind of helped him debrief from the day. So whatever those things are, some people like to walk, some people like to read. There's just getting in on some of your hobbies that you like to do. And then separating work and family time. Again, can be really, really hard to do, but trying to realize maybe, if you come home, be present with your children. So another strategy is to cultivate a productive mindset. So we did kind of talk a little bit about some of these strategies. This means use that positive self-talk. So kind of those 3 C's like we talked about. You can tell yourself, I'm calm, I'm capable, and I am in control. And for me, I've had to use this several times when maybe I knew I was going into some really intense, stressful situations, or use some other words that help, but trying to use that positive self-talk in a manner. A lot of times we're our own worst critic. We're harder on ourselves than we are our friends. Using that deep breathing, take that time to just pause, accept, and have a problem-solving situation, especially if you're getting in heated situations, maybe with a family member. Take that deep breath, maybe say, I am upset, I need to take a deep breath and, refocus and come back in a few minutes. And then again, use acceptance. So focus on solutions. So it seems like sometimes people are really easy to come up and point out a problem, but maybe a little on the, don't have as many ideas about how to focus on the solutions. So try to figure that part out. So the next ones I'm going to go through pretty quickly here, but just thinking again about specific to farm and ranch families. Sometimes we might tend to aim for the most profitable, or sometimes we try to aim for the highest yield within our crops, but that might not always be the most profitable. So kind of sitting down and thinking about maybe cutting seeding rates or looking at some of the other information that's out there. Potentially, reduce family living expenses. So you don't have that pressure of having to provide those expensive vacations or whatever it is for your family. Sometimes I think there's great vacations and stuff that we can take just 60 miles or so away from home. It's just spending that quality time with each other. Increase non-farm income. We've seen a lot of people developing maybe some value added operations or turning their hobbies into an income. Of course, in extension, we provide lots of education. So try to come up with, figure out what is the latest research-based information, and are there some of those things that I can do to help my operation? And communication is so, so important. So working with your lender, your tax advisor, and just your friends and family, just kind of again, opening up and starting those communication. So I'm going to skip this just for the sake of time. So those were some strategies. I hope that they are helpful. And if you have other strategies that I did not mention, please feel free to type those in the chat box. I forgot to say I wanted this to be a little engaging. So if there are any other strategies, I would love to learn from you all as well. So if you do have a friend or family member, or maybe even yourself is in that distress, you're having that prolonged amount of stress, here's just some other kind of little tips. So unfortunately, sometimes farmers are reluctant to seek help. Sometimes we have that stigma associated with like our mental health or going to a mental health counselor. But take time to recognize the signs of distress. So if you're having some, chronic issues, express that concern. If it's somebody else, like I said, if someone is in isolation and that's not them, you haven't seen them at the coffee shop for a while, reach out to them and just ask them about their situation. Ask them about, their future plans. And if you do think that someone is potentially thinking about killing themselves, reach out to them and take immediate action. And we have the suicide prevention line. Here is the phone number. I actually have typed it into my phone in case I am dealing with someone who is reached that very difficult level, so that I have that information on my phone and don't have to try to Google that. The biggest thing to realize is that we might be strong. With the floods, we had the logo out there, Nebraska strong. But being strong also means that you shouldn't be too strong to reach out for help. And fortunately, here in Nebraska, we have our rural response hotline, which is a wonderful, amazing resource for anyone to use. We also have our Nebraska Family Helpline there. And at the end, I'll put in a link that we have on our extension website that has access to a lot of these pieces of my presentation and a lot more information to help you out as well. So at that point, I see we have some information here in the chat. Oh, wonderful. Some of you are out there helping me out here, put in the rural response hotline. Appreciate that. I see also we have watching inspirational TV on a computer. Oh, I love Joel Osteen. He's a real good, has some real good inspirational things. So appreciate that. So, can I go back to the page on resources? Absolutely here. Oops, sorry. There you go. Let's get back to that here. I guess maybe this time, Ryan, go ahead and launch my last poll there. And then I've got just a couple little closing slides here. And if you have questions, please feel free to type those in the chat box. And Amy, does hopefully be good for me to move on. Okay, about half of you responded, so that's good. For the sake of time, we'll wrap that up there. So hopefully that was really helpful to you. So just one closing slide here to remember, whether it's yourself or whether it's somebody else, is that listening is really, really important. So listening to a person that might be in distress, it can be key. And here's a quick little video.
Just there's all this pressure, you know, and sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Do you have a nail head?
It's not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Sounds really hard.
Thanks. Thank you. Ow!
Come on. If you would just
Don't.
Okay, try to end things on a little happy note there, and with a little bit of humor. So kind of wrapping it up here, a few quotes. Your health is your wealth. So again, taking time to care for yourself. And then here was just another quote that I really liked, and it said, be smart, take care of yourself, keep your body and mind sound and your well full so you have something to give to your family and your business. And with that, that is my presentation. Here is some information if you need to contact me, and on our ruralwellness.unl.edu website, we do have access to a lot of handouts that normally we are able to provide with this presentation, and lots of other resources. So thank you all very much for joining, and you have a great day.
Thank you so much, Brandy, for a great presentation. And we will put the recording of today's webinar up on our Center for Ag Profitability website, cap.unl.edu. That's cap.unl.edu. If you look on the webinar archive. And there you can also register for next week's webinar, also at noon Central Time. We will be looking at triggering pasture and forage management decisions before a drought. So we hope you can join us then. And I did put the link to a short survey in the chat box as well. If you could please click on that, and your feedback is really, really appreciated here as we come up with more webinars here every week through the Center for Ag Profitability. So once again, I just want to thank everybody for attending today, and especially thank you to Brandy for a great presentation again. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your Thursday.